Zach, I have bad news.
What?
They still think aluminum is Adonalsium's god metal.
No, aluminum?
I don't understand!
Sule! Today, we're getting a bit more theoretical than usual. I've seen and heard a lot of talk about pure Adonalsium investiture since the release of Wind and Truth. And in short, I'm not sure the idea makes a whole lot of sense. There will be minor spoilers for the Cosmere, but nothing related to the main plots of the series. Also, we are on a quest for 3,000 subscribers by the end of the year, so your subscription would be much appreciated. First of all, what exactly is investiture? Get ready for a pretty brief crash course because this is not the main topic for today. You can find a more in-depth video about investiture linked in the description, and we might make one in the future. Anyway, the Cosmere is much like the real world, as both are made up of matter and energy. Matter can be converted into energy, and energy can be converted into matter. This is best described by that fancy formula that was probably on a poster in your middle school science classroom. The Cosmere, however, has a twist that makes it different from our own universe. Investiture is the third fundamental essence that makes up the Cosmere. Investiture can also be transformed into matter or energy, and vice versa, though we've yet to see an equation describe this relationship from a Cosmere Einstein. Investiture originates from the spiritual realm, but it can be transferred to the cognitive or physical realms through the use of various magics. In short, think of investiture as a mystical source of magic potential that can be applied in many unique ways. As far as we know, everything in the Cosmere was created by Adonalsium. I'm gonna painfully restrain myself from bringing up the Aethers. While yes, the origins of the Cosmere and the three essences that make it up are a massive mystery, we do have confirmation from Brandon about this point, from the Oathbringer London signing in 2017. Wow, I can't believe that's actually been almost a decade ago. Brandon states this: investiture predates the shattering of Adonalsium. All investiture was from Adonalsium. All investiture got assigned to one of the 16 shards when Adonalsium was shattered. I think this quote is pretty clear about the relationship of investiture to Adonalsium. All investiture in the Cosmere is from Big A, and that could mean he created it, or maybe he is it. In fact, I tackled this very idea in our video about Adonalsium here. After the shattering, all investiture was assigned, whatever that means, to their relative shards. Now, these shards are the 16 pieces of the power of creation which made up Adonalsium. Does this include the matter and energy created by Adonalsium? Well, while answering another question from the same signing, Brandon states this: remember, when I say investiture, I mean matter, energy, and magic. Sometimes the word investiture refers just to the magic such as the Aviar, and in that it is associated directly with one of the shards. This may be difficult to wrap your head around, and I'm gonna be honest, I also have to do a bit of interpreting here. When Brandon talks about investiture, he is also talking about matter and energy, which are two separate fundamental essences that make up the Cosmere. What I think he means here is that shards are essentially massive pools of investiture with a specific intent, and they're all made up of Adonalsium. This would make Adonalsium himself the pool of all investiture in the Cosmere, which he used to create or form all matter and energy. In essence, everything is investiture, or was at least created by investiture. And what that means is that everything, matter, energy, and investiture can be attributed to at least one of the 16 shards. This is further proven by another one of Brandon's comments in that first response I shared. He states this: technically, you can make the argument that Harmony could feel the sense of preservation on every world in the Cosmere, right? Because the building blocks of all life and creation are these things. Overlord Jeebus says, so the shard of preservation embodies all preservation in the Cosmere? Sanderson says, yes. I want you to really understand the implications of this idea. Everything in the Cosmere is connected to these shards. Death and destruction relates to ruin. Growth relates to cultivation. Art relates to virtuosity. Clearly, all of these things exist on all inhabited planets, regardless of the current presence of a shard. Just because whimsy may have never stopped by Scadrial doesn't mean that humor doesn't exist there. I mean, have you met Wayne? Actually, Scadrial's a pretty interesting case because, well, it was specifically created by the shard's ruin and preservation. None of the other shards had a hand in its creation. The world and its inhabitants did not exist before the shattering. Even still, other intents exist on this world even if the other shards haven't invested themselves there. I want you to keep all of this in mind when we talk about the theorized pure Adonalsium investiture. Now, what am I even talking about when I say pure Adonalsium investiture? Well, the first time I heard about something like this was after Wind and Truth. I know that this idea idea might be older than this, but I'm relatively new to the Cosmere, so give me a break. There was a theory going around about the fourth moon's metal being made up of Adonalsium's god metal. The idea is that Adonalsium created Roshar before the shattering. Also, this moon was destroyed and crashed into the planet before any shards seem to have invested themselves there. Add on to the fact that Roshar was Adonalsium's pet system, and it makes a lot of sense that Adonalsium would have created this moon out of his own god metal. I've also heard a theory recently that relates to Isles of the Emberdark. I'm going to give minor spoilers to Isles of the Emberdark here, so if you don't want to hear them, I recommend pausing this video and using the chapters to skip ahead. This will be brief. So yeah, you've been warned. Okay, in Isles of the Emberdark, we finally get a POV in Silverlight, a city in the cognitive realm. Underneath Silverlight lives the Silverlight Nexus, a perpendicularity that connects to 3 other places, presumably all in the physical realm. The idea is that this perpendicularity is Adonalsium's perpendicularity. This perpendicularity seems particularly powerful if it can link multiple locations, and one of these locations is Yolen, the planet where Adonalsium was shattered. It would make sense that if Adonalsium were hanging out on Yolen for a long time, he would have a perpendicularity there as well. Then, maybe this was trapped here when he was shattered. Okay, no more talking about Emberdark. I now want to lay out my problems with this line of thinking. First, I'm not certain what pure Adonalsium investiture really even means. Remember, all investiture comes from Adonalsium. He used it to create everything in the Cosmere. Matter and energy were created to form planetary systems and life forms. He even left magic on a number of these systems before the shattering, like Roshar's ancient spren. It is really difficult to understand what a pure form of Adonalsium's investiture would even look like. I think if we were to grant the existence of a pure Adonalsium investiture, it would be the perfect balance of all 16 Shardic intents. If you ran across something like that, what would it even be? Would it create something powerful, completely mundane, or would it be something we've never seen before? It would likely depend on the application, but I would wager whatever it is would not be able to be attributed to one shard more than another. For example, the fourth moon blocks the vision of shards. This seems pretty close to the intent of autonomy, as Trellium has a similar base property when you pierce your body with it. Also, the metal acts a bit like aluminum according to Honor, which would be unexpected if aluminum is merely one of the creations of Adonalsium. Why not act like any of the other metals? My second issue with this is that there's already a much simpler explanation for these mysterious magics that predate the shattering. Adonalsium created them using various intents in their creation process. We already have another invested metal that predates the shattering in the Rosharan system. Braze. Whatever this metal is, it's invested with specific intents. The metal draws souls and investiture to it and keeps them there. To me, this sounds more like the intent of Dominion than any of the other shards. I think calling something Adonalsium's investiture simply because it isn't associated with a single shard is a category error. All investiture is Adonalsium's, and even if it was directly created by him, that doesn't mean it's separate from the shards, because everything comes from the shards, pre or post shattering. Now, I truly hope I'm not coming across as a jerk. This is not my intention. I think this is a relatively complicated topic and it deserves nuance. I grant that it's possible that a pure Adonalsium investiture could exist. I'm just not convinced that it's anything we've seen so far. If it displays only some of the Shardic intents, then it can't be a pure combination of all of them, right? Even then, what's the significance if it does? I think the conversation is more interesting when we discuss the possible intents related to the phenomena, and what amount of influence a shard might have over it when they learn of its existence. But what do you think? Am I completely thinking of this topic wrong? What would pure Adonalsium investiture be like? Would the rhythm of Adonalsium be completely insane? If you enjoyed this video, check out some of our other lore and theory videos in the channel playlists. Kolo?